I want to take up in volume 12 at December the 18th, 1920. The requital of love and of thanksgiving for all that God operated in the Celestial Mother. Luisa said she was all afflicted without Jesus. While she was praying, she actually felt him near, and he said to her, "Ah, my daughter, things are going to get worse." This is 1920. So you have the communist revolution creating the USSR and creating havoc in all of those incredible nations, and the persecutions of the Christians and the destruction of religion and the worship of the state. God is thrown out completely. And other nations followed suit, as you know, with Pol Pot and people like that in the East. "Ah, my daughter, things get worse. It will enter like a whirlwind and shake everything. The it, I think, is this communist revolution. It will reign for a time like a whirlwind, and as a whirlwind, it will also end. It will come, do its destruction, and go." Now, we've lived through the time when officially the USSR collapsed in 1998. And it collapsed without anybody firing a shot. The Italian government lacks the ground under its feet. So Italy was going to have a terrible effect from all of this because they absorbed communism. And since Italy was the heart of the church, it was a devastating kick in the teeth to Jesus. "The Italian government lacks the ground under its feet, and it does not know where to reach to," he said. Justice of God. After this, Luisa said she felt outside of herself, and she found herself together with Jesus and so clasped to him and he with her that she could almost not see his divine person. So a lovely image of union there. "And I don't know how," she said, "my sweet Jesus, while I'm clasped to you, I want to attest to you my love, my gratitude, and everything that the creature has the duty to do, because you have created our Immaculate Queen Mother." So here she is thanking the Lord on behalf of all of us for creating our Blessed Mother. She's the most beautiful, the holiest, and a portent of grace, enriching her with all gifts and making her also our mother. "And this I do in the name of all, past, present, and future. I want to catch in flight each act of the creatures, each word, each thought, each heartbeat, each step. And in each of them I want to tell you that I love you, I thank you, I bless you, I adore you for all that you have done for my celestial mother and yours." Jesus enjoyed her making this act. And he said to her, "My daughter, I was anxiously awaiting for this act of yours in the name of all generations. My justice, my love, felt the need for this requital, because great are the graces that descend upon everyone for having been so enriched my mother." Yet there's never a word, never a thank you to me. This is human beings accepting whatever is given to them, and it doesn't occur to them to say thanks. Another day I was saying to my beloved Jesus, "Everything is over for me, suffering, visits of Jesus, everything." And he immediately said, "Have you perhaps stopped loving me or doing my will?" And Luisa said, "No, may this never be." Well, he said, if this is not there, nothing's over. Again, she's falling into the trap of looking at her feelings and not looking at the reality of her condition of union with God. And so it's a timely warning for us not to be governed by how we feel, but to look at the reality of our union with God. So December the 22nd, 1920, the creative power is found in the divine will. Luisa said, "I was thinking about the most holy will of God, saying to myself, what a magic force this divine will has. What power, what enchantment. And while I was thinking of this, Jesus said, 'My daughter, even the mere words will of God contains creative power.' Isn't that extraordinary? Therefore, It has the power to create, to transform, to consume, and to make new torrents of light and love and sanctity run in the soul. Psalm 36, verses 9 to 10. The torrents of your delight flow over me. Only in the fiat is this creative power. And if the priest consecrates me in the host, it's only because of the divine will that gave this power to those words which are pronounced over the Holy Host. If the divine will didn't want it, it wouldn't happen. So, everything comes from and everything is found in the fiat. And if at the mere thought of doing my will, the soul feels sweetened, strengthened and changed, because by thinking of doing my will, it is as if she were placing herself on the way to find all the goods. What will not happen if she actually does it? So if even speaking the words, will of God, even thinking about the possibility of living in the will of God brings so much grace, what's going to happen when we actually surrender? I want to give you James 1:22, where James tells us to stop just looking at the word, but live it. Let it become a reality in our lives. And that is the challenge here at the end of volume 12. You've heard everything, now go and live it. So after this, Luisa recalled that years before, Jesus had said to her, "We will present ourselves before the Supreme Majesty with written on our foreheads in indelible characters, we want death to give life to our brothers. We want pains to free them from eternal pains." We've had that earlier in volume 12. Now, I said to myself, how can I do this if he doesn't come? I could do it together with him, but I'm not able to do it by myself. There's your John 15:5. I can't do it without him. And Philippians 4:13, I can do all things in Christ who gives me the strength. And then she said, how can I suffer so many deaths? And blessed Jesus moving in her interior, which of course is Luke 17:21 and 1 Corinthians 3:16. He said, my daughter, you can do it always and at every instant, because I am always with you and I never leave you. Now, I never leave you is Joshua 1:5. And then, I want you to know how these deaths are and how they're formed. I suffer death when my will wants to operate some good in the soul, and the soul departing from me, it brings with itself the grace. Let me go back on that. Jesus said, I suffer death when my will wants to operate some good in the soul. So that good departing from me, it brings with itself the grace and the help which are needed in order to do that good. So we call that prevenient grace. That's what the church officially calls it. That is the grace to do something. We can't do any good by ourselves. John 15:5, without me you can do nothing. And so if the Lord sees that we want to do something good, he actually gives you the prevenient grace, the grace that enables you to do it. Now, but if the creature is reluctant, it is as if my will suffered a death, because this good is not going to go out from his will. Oh, how many deaths my will suffers. Death in the soul is when I want her to do some good, and by not doing it, she dies to that good. That means there's an opportunity for me to forgive and I let it pass. Or there's an opportunity for me to be patient and kind and I let it go. Her will dies to that good. So, if the soul is not in continuous act of doing my will, she suffers as many deaths for as many times as she doesn't do it. She dies to that light. And she dies to that light which she should have had by doing this good. She dies to that grace and she dies to those charisms. He's trying to let us know how serious it is to let an opportunity for grace pass us by. Now, I will tell you what your debts are, he said to Luisa, with which you could give life to your brothers. When you feel you are without me and your heart is lacerated, that's the deprivations, and you feel an iron hand that grips it, you feel a death. But rather more than a death, because death would be life for you. In other words, if she dies, she goes to heaven. This death could give life to your brothers. In other words, all the things that cause you suffering, distress, disturbance, pain, trials, everything, they should all be offered with the sufferings, redemptive sufferings of Jesus in his will to give life to souls. Otherwise, we're losing immense opportunities for divine currency. This death, he said, could give life to our brothers, because this pain and this death contain a divine life, an immense light, a creative strength. They contain everything. Now, Luisa is suffering this in the divine will. That's why Jesus is saying it has a divine life and creative strength and immense light. It is a death and pain that contains an eternal and infinite value. Of course, if you offer that for others, you're going to get tremendous fruit. Therefore, how many lives could you give to our brothers? I will suffer these deaths together with you because they are one. They are inseparable. I will give them the value of my death. So we join our deaths to his, to get his infinite merits, so as to make life come out of that death. So take a look at how many deaths you suffer. Each time you want me and you do not find me, it is a real death for you, because you truly do not see me. So that's Psalm 22, verse 1. My God, why have you forsaken me? And you don't feel me. For you it is death, it is martyrdom. And what is death for you can be life for others. So he's letting her see just how precious the deprivation is if she would turn it into divine currency. So that's 2 Corinthians 1, verses 3 to 7. So we go to December the 25th, 1920, and Jesus says that his sacramental lot is even harder than the circumstances that he experienced in his infancy. So Luisa has been obviously doing the Christmas novena, meditating on the passion of Jesus in his mother's womb. And then you have this message coming through. As I was in my usual state, I found myself outside of myself together with Jesus. I was walking a long way, and on this journey I walked with Jesus. And then I was with my Queen Mother. If Jesus disappeared, I found myself with Mother. And if she disappeared, I found myself with Jesus. And during this walk, I want to give you Genesis 3:8, because God walked with Adam in the cool of the day. During this walk, they told me many things. Jesus and Mother were very affable, with an enchanting sweetness. I forgot everything. I forgot my bitterness and even their privations. I thought I'd never lose them again. Oh, how easy it is to forget evil in the face of good. And sometimes it's easy to forget good in the face of evil. Now, at the end of the walk, our celestial mother took me in her arms. I was very little, very little. In other words, she was an infant. Because it's the 25th of December, isn't it? And she said to me, "My daughter, I want to strengthen you in everything." And it seemed that she was marking my forehead with her holy hand, as if she were writing and placing a seal on it. And then it seemed as if she were writing in my eyes, in my mouth, in my heart, in my hands, and my feet, placing a seal on them. I wanted to see what she was writing, but I couldn't read the script. Only on my mouth I saw 2 letters which said, "Annihilation of every taste." And immediately I said, "Thank you, Mother. you take away from me every taste which is not Jesus. I wanted to understand more, but Mother told me it's not necessary for you to know. Trust me, I did to you what was necessary. She blessed me and she disappeared. So I want to give you Revelation 13, verses 16 to 17, where Satan also puts a mark or a seal on the people who give themselves to him. And before that, I think it's in Revelation 7, or a little bit later, maybe Revelation 8, where before the great chastisements, the Lord puts a seal on all who love him. So obviously we are all marked, and this mark can be seen in the spiritual realm. We can't see it, but the spiritual realm knows exactly who's who. Afterwards, my sweet Jesus came back. He was a little tender baby. It's the 25th of December, of course. Wailing and crying and shivering with cold. He threw himself into my arms to be warmed. I squeezed him so very tightly to myself. And according to my usual way, I fused myself in his will in order to find the thoughts of all with mine, to surround shivering Jesus with the adorations from all created intellects, in order to find the gazes of all and to make all look at Jesus and distract him from the crying, in order to find the mouths, the words, the voices of all creatures, that all might kiss him so as not to make him wail, and they might warm him with their breath. And while I was doing this, the infant Jesus stopped wailing and crying, and as though warmed, he then speaks to her as an adult. My daughter, he said. You know, if he's an infant, how can she be my daughter? So what you're having there is a different images given to you. My daughter, did you see what made me shiver and cry and wail? It's the abandonment of creatures. Now, this is 1921, so you're talking about atheistic materialism and communism and Marxism and Freemasonry and all that goes with it. You placed them all around me. I felt I was being watched and kissed by all, so I stopped crying. In other words, she was making an effort to requite him on the part of human beings for all that he has done for us. However, he's going to make a comparison now, because Jesus is not coming to her as in the days of his incarnation. Jesus is with us in the tabernacles, in the sacred host. And so he says to her, please know that my sacramental lot is even harder than my lot as an infant. Though cold, the grotto was spacious and had air to breathe. The host is cold, but it is so small that I almost lack air. In the grotto I had a manger with a little hay for a bed. In my sacramental life I don't even have hay. I've nothing but hard and ice-cold metals for bed. In the grotto I had my dear mother, who took me very often in her arms with her most pure hands. She covered me with ardent kisses in order to warm me. She soothed my crying. She nourished me with her most sweet milk. In my sacramental life it's all the opposite. I don't have a mother, and if they take me, I feel the touch of unworthy hands which smell like earth and muck. Oh, how I feel their stench, more than manure that I smelled in the grotto. So there I want to give you Hebrews 12:14. Without holiness, we cannot enter the presence of God. And you see the Lord responding to the sin that approaches him. So I want to give you Habakkuk 1:13 as well. Lord, your eyes are too holy to look upon evil. So he says, I feel the touch of unworthy hands, which smell like earth and muck. Oh, how I feel their stench, more than the manure I smelled in the grotto. Instead of covering me with kisses, they touch me with irreverent acts. Instead of milk, they give me the bile of sacrileges, of indifference and of coldness. In the grotto, St. Joseph never left me without the light of a little lantern at night. Here in the sacrament, how many times I remain in the dark also at night. So he's obviously referring to the lack of the tabernacle light there. Oh, how much more painful is my sacramental lot. How many hidden tears not seen by anyone. How many wails not listened to. If my lot as an infant moved you to pity, much more should my sacramental lot move you to pity. So there's a graphic description of the way Jesus actually feels in our tabernacles. And yet most Catholics treat the Lord in the Holy Eucharist as if he had no feelings. Yes, we do say in words that we receive the body, blood, soul and divinity of Jesus Christ. In other words, we receive the whole of Jesus. And yet we don't think he has any feelings, or that he has any personal response to us, or that he reacts to us in any way, or that he sees our unworthiness. It's not logical, is it? It means that our reactions actually make the statement that we don't really believe. January the 5th, 1921. The true life of the soul done in my will is nothing other than the formation of the life of Jesus in the soul. So this is a very important message. I mean, they're all important, but some of them stand out. Continuing in my usual state, I was praying. And while praying, I intended to enter the divine will. So notice the deliberate entering into the divine will. And so making all that exists in the divine will my own. Look at this. This is very important. Since nothing escapes the divine will, past, present or future, and making myself the crown of all, in the name of all, I brought my homage, my love, my reparation, etc. before the divine majesty. Now, my beloved Jesus, moving in my interior, told me, my daughter, the true life of the soul done in my will is nothing other than the formation of her life in mine. I want to give you 2 Corinthians 5:17. What matters is that we become a whole new creation in Christ. We become another Christ. So I give my own shape to everything that she does. I did nothing but make all the acts that I did, both interior and exterior, fly within the divine will. I made each thought of my mind fly, and hovering over each thought of the creature, which all existed in my will, my thought hovering over all made itself as though the crown of each human intelligence. So now you see the way Luisa has just been praying. I make myself the crown of all. It made itself as though the crown of each human intelligence, and brought the homage, the adoration, the glory, the love, the reparation of each created thought to the divine majesty of the Father. The same with my gaze, my word, my motion, and my step. Now, in order to live in my will, the soul must give the shape of my mind to her mind. That's Philippians chapter 2, verses 1 to 5. Let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus. And also I want to give you Ephesians chapter 4. The soul must give the shape of my mind to her mind, the shape of my gaze, of my word, of my motion to hers. So everything in us has got to be transformed into Jesus. Our thinking, our wanting, our willing, our desiring, our acting, everything. And by doing this, the soul loses her shape and acquires mine. So we lose the likeness of the old man and we gain the likeness of the new man, which is Christ. Now the old man and new man are the language of St. Paul. And you'll hear this language in Ephesians, in Colossians, in Philippians, just to give you 3 of his letters. The soul does nothing other than give continuous deaths to the human life and continuous life to the divine will. Now, here we've got something utterly basic that we have been given many times. But Jesus is a very good teacher. So a teacher knows that the fact that you've said something once does not mean that the pupils actually get it. And so the teacher revises things and will say things over and over again from slightly different angles in order to get the pupils to hear. And that's exactly what Jesus does here. And so he says that in order to live in the divine will, it'll only happen if you put down the human will. It's as simple as that. And so we said back in volume 1 and 2 that our motto has to be, not my will, but thine be done, O Lord. In this way, the soul will be able to complete the life of my will within herself. Keep putting down the human will and the divine will take over. Otherwise, this prodigy, this shape fully modelled on mine, will never be accomplished completely. Now, it's the completely that's terribly important, because generous souls will give a lot to the Lord, but they may balk at the little word completely. There may be something of themselves that they want to hold on to. We don't like surrendering completely, because that means that you're not in control. Somebody else has the controls. And so it's hard for us to hand over the controls to the Lord. Only my will, which is eternal and immense, allows her to find everything. So if we haven't surrendered completely, we cannot enter completely into all the wonders of the divine will. The divine will reduces the past and the future to a single point. This is this singularity which is God. Infinitely small, infinitely immense. It's incredible. And in this single point she finds all the beating hearts, all the living minds, and all of my works in act. So in that singularity, or that single point, there's neither past nor future. Everything is present, because it's outside of the dimensions of time and space. And the soul, making my will her own, is able to do everything. She's able to satisfy for all, to love for all, and to do good to all, and to every single individual, as if they were all one. Who can ever reach such an extent? No virtue, no heroism, not even martyrdom can stand before my will. So the greatest of the greats before the divine will have to bow. And yet the least of us in the divine will is privileged more than our greatest canonized saints. It's totally incredible. All, he said, all remain behind the operating done in my will. Therefore be attentive and let the mission of my will have its fulfillment in you. Amen. We've all got to say amen to that, but we've all got to pay the price, which is laying down the human will before the divine. So January the 7th, 1921, the smile of Jesus when he can see the first fruits, the children of the divine will. Now Jesus had to wait until enough of the priests around Luisa came to understand something of the divine will and began to try and live it themselves, and then that they would spread it out, and so very slowly the message of the divine will would begin to spread out among others. And so this is 1921, very early for this. As I was in my usual state, my beloved Jesus came and surrounded my neck with his arm. That's Song of Songs 2:6. And when he drew near my heart and holding his breast, between his hands. He pressed it to my heart, and rivulets of milk came out of it. He filled my heart with those rivulets of milk, and he told me, "My daughter, do you see how much I love you? I wanted to fill all of your heart with the milk of grace and love." Now, when you go back to volumes 1 to 4, the first time we met her receiving this milk from the Lord, all I could say to you was that other saints had experienced the same thing. Here Jesus is actually naming it, that it's milk of grace and love. So, everything you say and do will be nothing other than the outpouring of the grace that I have filled into you. That's John 7:37 to 39. You will do nothing. You will just place your will at the mercy of the divine will, and I will do everything. You see, it's so easy. All we've got to do is surrender and let him do what he wants to do. You will be nothing but the sound of my voice, the bearer of my will, the destroyer of the virtues in a human way, the restorer of the virtues in a divine manner, which are founded on an eternal, immense, infinite point. How do you respond to that except to say, amazing? We just have to surrender and let him take over. It's about that simple. After a little while, Jesus came back, and Luisa was feeling all annihilated, especially in thinking about certain things which are not necessary to write here. She said her affliction was at its summit. And she said to herself, how can this be? My Jesus, do not permit this. Maybe you want the will, but not the act of this particular sacrifice. And then, in the hard state in which I find myself, I aspire to nothing but heaven. But Jesus, coming out from my interior, burst into sobbing, and I could hear that sob resound in heaven and on earth. But as he was about to stop sobbing, a smile arose, and just like the sob, the smile reverberated in heaven and on earth, because it's divine will. It could be heard everywhere. Luisa said she remained enchanted, and Jesus said, my beloved daughter, after the great sorrow which creatures have given to me in these sad times, that's the sobbing, to the extent of making me cry, and because of this crying of God, could you imagine that we can cause God to cry? It resounds in heaven and on earth. A smile will take over, which will also fill heaven and earth with gladness. And this smile will arise on my lips when I see the first fruits, the children of my will. So the children of my will is Romans 8:19. Living not in the human sphere, but in the divine sphere. He said heaven will begin to smile when the children of the divine will are born. I will see them all marked with the eternal, immense, infinite divine will. I will see that eternal point, which has life only in heaven, flow upon the earth and mould the souls with its infinite principles, with divine acting, with the multiplication of acts within one single act. So all of our acts in the divine will are all inside the fiat of God. Our little acts in his act, our little fiat inside his fiat, our drop of wine, our drop of water in the wine of his redemption. It's our participation. And just as creation came out from one fiat, in the fiat it will be fulfilled. Only the children of the divine will accomplish everything in the fiat. And in my fiat, which will have life in them, I will receive complete glory, complete love, complete reparation, complete thanksgiving, and complete praise for everything and for everyone. Complete means nothing will be left out, nothing will be missing. My daughter, things returned there where they come from. Everything came out from the fiat, and in the fiat everything will return to me. These children of the divine will be few, but in the fiat they will give me everything. It doesn't matter to the Lord that it's only a few in number. What matters is that they are there, and that there are a few, and that we actually do live the divine will, and that we do live it on behalf of all our brothers and sisters to take them with us to heaven. So, January the 10th, 1921, the Fiat Mihi of the Most Holy Virgin. Luisa said, I was concerned about what was written above, and I said to myself, I don't know what Jesus wants from me. Yet, he knows how bad I am and how good at nothing I am. And Jesus said, my daughter, remember that years ago I asked you if you wanted to live in my will. You see, the Lord will always come back and ask you, do you want to live this way? Even though you've told him yes, and he has celebrated that yes. It's like a couple who sign their lives over to each other on the day of their marriage, but they have to tell each other that they love each other on every day that they live together. Otherwise that marriage can break down. He said, years ago I asked you if you wanted to live in my will. And since I wanted you in my will, I wanted you to pronounce your yes in my own volition. This yes was bound to an eternal point, that's that singularity of the divine will. And it was bound to a will which will never end. This yes of yours is in the centre of my will, surrounded by infinite immensity. So on the one hand you can say it's a singularity, it's a single point, and on the other you have to say it's total infinite immensity. Now our poor minds are not able to handle those two extremes. This yes is in the centre of my volition, surrounded by infinite immensity. And if it tries to go out, it can't find the way. You will hear Luisa say this when you get to the higher volumes. Therefore, at your little oppositions, at some discontent of yours, I laugh, he said, and I enjoy myself because I see you like those people who are bound of their own will in the depths of the sea, and wanting to go out, they find nothing but water. And since they are bound in the depths of the sea, they feel the bother of wanting to go out. And in order to remain tranquil and happy, they plunge themselves even more into the depths of the sea. In the same way, in seeing you perplexed as though wanting to go out, and in seeing that you are unable to do it, being bound by your own yes. You see, the bond is there. You plunge yourself even more into the depths of my will, and I laugh and I enjoy myself. And then, do you think it's something trivial and easy to move from within my divine will? You would move an eternal point. She's going to discover as we move into higher volumes that once this commitment is made, shifting from it has frightening consequences. You would move an eternal point, and if you knew what it means to move an eternal point, you would tremble with fright. He's not going to talk about this until later now. And then he added, I asked the first yes in my fiat of my dear mother. Now, her yes was given at the very first instant of life, and then it was pronounced in her later years in Luke 1:3-38 when she said, Fiat mihi secundum verbum tuum. Oh, the power of her fiat in my will, he said. As soon as the divine fiat met with the fiat of my mother, the two became one. My fiat raised her, divinized her, overshadowed her, and with no human intervention conceived me, the Son of God. Only in my fiat could she conceive me. My fiat communicated to her immensity, infinity, fecundity in a divine manner, and therefore the immense, eternal, infinite one could be conceived in this creature. As soon as she said, Fiat mihi secundum verbum tuum, Luke 1:38, not only did she take possession of me, but she overshadowed all creatures and all created things. She felt within herself the life of all creatures, and from that moment she began to act as the mother and the queen of all. Why would this happen? Because she has now conceived him who has the divine will in him as nature. She has the divine will in her by grace. And so the divine will in her and the divine will in Jesus match and marry each other. How many portents does this yes of my mother not contain? If I wanted to tell them all, you'd never stop listening. So in other words, no matter how much explanation Jesus gives, there's no possibility of plumbing the depths of this. And so because Blessed Mother has conceived the Eternal One in her womb, everything that is in the divine will is now in her. And that's why she felt inside of herself the life of all creatures. And from that moment, realised she was the mother of all. It's confirmed at the foot of the cross. Now Jesus said, I asked a second yes in my will from you, Luisa. And you, though trembling, pronounced it. This yes in my volition will accomplish its portents. It will have its divine fulfillment. But you should follow me and plunge yourself more deeply into the immense sea of my will, and I'll take care of everything. My mother did not think about how I would manage to incarnate myself in her. The only thing she asked was that how could it happen when she wasn't going to have relations with man? She just said, Fiat mihi, be it done to me. And I took care of how to be incarnated. And the same will happen for you. Now, when Jesus explains this, a lot of the difficulties that you might experience in the divine will just simply disappear. You desire it, he said, I'll do it. Our job is to put down the human will and let the divine will take over. Our job is to surrender. Fiat mihi secundum verbum tuum. Our job is to let our will click finally, permanently, eternally into the divine will now. And then he will work his wonders upon the earth. So January the 17th, 1921 continues on the Fiat mihi of Blessed Mother. Luisa said, I felt my poor mind immersed in the immense sea of the divine volition. I could see the mark of the fiat everywhere. I saw it in the sun, and it seemed to me that the echo of the fiat in the sun brought me divine love, which darted through me, wounded me, and flashed through me. And I, on the wings of the fiat of the sun, went up to the Eternal One, bringing in the name of the whole human family the love which darted, wounded, and flashed through the Supreme Majesty. In other words, there's the circle of love complete. Now, the sun is inanimate matter, and Luisa is the speaking creation. So the speaking creation takes the love of the inanimate matter and brings it back to the source of love. And so that is the role that the Lord has given to us as the speaking creation, that in the name of all, we can actually speak for them and offer what they want to offer to God. And I said, in your fiat, you gave me all this love, and only in your fiat can I actually return it to you. And then secondly, Luisa said, I looked at the stars and I could see the fiat in them. And in their sweet and meek glittering, this fiat brought me peaceful love, sweet love, hidden love, compassionate love in the very night of sin. Now she's thinking of the whole human race, of course. And I, in the fiat of the stars and in the name of all, brought to the throne of the Eternal One this peaceful love in order to put peace between heaven and earth, and the sweet love of the loving souls, the hidden love of many others, and the love of creatures when after sin they would come back to God. But who can say all that I understood and did in the many fiats which were scattered all over creation? It would be too long, so I'll stop here. Then my sweet Jesus took my hands in his own, and squeezing them tightly, he told me, "My daughter, the fiat is all full of life. Even more, it is life itself." So I want to give you John 14:6 there. I am the way, the truth, and the life. And this is why I want to give you, John chapter 1, verses 1 to 4 as well. And this is why all lives and all things come out from the fiat. Creation came out from my fiat. Therefore, in each created thing, one can see the mark of the fiat. So what he's saying is, Luisa has seen this, and so he's emphasizing it for her, making sure that she understands what she has seen. Redemption came out of the fiat mihi of my dear mother, pronounced in my volition, just as Luisa pronounced her fiat in the divine volition as well, and carrying the same power of my created fiat. That's the amazing thing, that a creature can operate with the same power. It's amazing. Therefore, there's nothing in redemption which does not contain the mark of the fiat mihi of my mother. Let me say that again. There is nothing in redemption that doesn't have the mark of Blessed Mother's fiat. Even my very humanity, he said, my steps, my words, my works, they were all marked with the fiat mihi. My pains, my wounds, my thorns, my cross, my blood had the mark of her fiat mihi. Because things carry the mark of the origin from which they came. That's a very important thing. We come from God, so we have the mark of creatures that have come from God. Jesus said, my origin in time was the fiat mihi of the Immaculate Mother, and therefore all of my works carry the mark of that fiat mihi. So her fiat mihi is in each sacramental host. If a man rises again from sin, if the newborn is baptized, if heaven opens to receive souls, it is the fiat mihi of my mother that marks everything, follows everything, and from it everything proceeds. Oh wow, the power of that fiat. It rises at every instant, it multiplies, and it becomes the life of all goods. Now, he said, I want to tell you why I asked for your fiat, for your yes in my volition. So Luisa had to give her yes in the divine fiat, just as Blessed Mother gave her yes in the divine fiat. I want the prayer which I taught, the fiat voluntas tua sicut in cielo et in terra. I want this prayer of so many centuries and so many generations to have its fulfillment and its completion. This is why I wanted another yes in my volition, another fiat containing the creative power. I want the fiat that rises at every instant and multiplies in everyone. I want in one soul my own fiat, which ascends to my throne, and by its creative power brings on earth the life of the fiat on earth as it is in heaven. Now, only the divine fiat can do it, so Luisa's fiat had to be in the divine fiat. Surprised and annihilated hearing this, Luisa said, "Jesus, what are you saying? Yet you know how bad and incapable I am." And Jesus' answer is wonderful, straight from Scripture. He said, "My daughter, it is my usual way to choose the most abject, unable, poor souls for my greatest works." Thanks be to God. That means there's a chance for you and me. Well, if you go to 1 Corinthians 1, verses 26 to 31, St. Paul will tell you this in plain English, even though it was written in Greek. He said he chooses the weak things of this world to confound the strong. And Jesus says in 2 Corinthians 12:9, "My power works best in weakness." So, if you, like the rest of us, think that you're unable, incapable, unworthy, too small, too unholy, too everything, then you're the right candidate. Just surrender to him. I think it's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. And that's why St. Paul says in 1 Corinthians chapter 1, where are the philosophers? Where are all the big heads trying to work everything out? And they haven't a clue about the way God actually works. And God is working under their noses and they can't see it. My daughter, it's my usual way to choose the most abject, the most unable, poor souls for my greatest works. Well, I don't know about you, but I praise him from the depths of my being for that. Even my mother had nothing extraordinary in her external life, no miracles, not a sign that would distinguish her from anybody else. Her only distinction was perfect virtue, but sure, nobody paid any attention. They would only think she was nice. And if to other saints I gave the distinction of miracles, I want to give you John 14:12 for that, my disciples will do the same works as I do when I go to the Father. So, if to other saints I gave the distinction of miracles and I adorned others with my wounds, that's the victim souls, to my mother, nothing. Nothing. And yet she was the portent of portents, the miracle of miracles, the true and perfect crucified one. No one was like her. And so, with this wonderful praise of Jesus, I want to remind you of a beautiful hymn we used to sing when Latin was still our language, the language of beauty and in the liturgy. We used to sing to her, "Tu gloria Jerusalem, tu laetitia Israel, tu honorificentia populi nostri." You are the glory of Jerusalem, the joy of Israel, the honour of our people. And it's taken from the book of Judith, chapter 15, verses 9 to 10. Tu gloria Jerusalem, tu laetitia Israel, tu honorificentia populi nostri, tu advocata peccatorum, tu advocata peccatorum, a Maria, tota pulchra eis, Maria, Maria. So we add the words, you are all beautiful, tota pulchra eis, Maria, and you are the one who intercedes for us sinners. She was the portent of portents, the miracle of miracles, the true and perfect crucified soul. And then Jesus said, I usually act like a master who has two servants. I love this story, absolutely love it. He said, one of them seems a Herculean giant, good at everything. The other one is short, unable, and seems to be good at nothing. Not any important service. Now, if the master keeps him, it's more for charity and out of fun. Now, having to send 1 million, whatever the currency is, 1 billion to another town, what does he do? He calls the little and the incapable one and entrusts this great sum of money to him, saying to himself, if I give it to the giant, all will fix their attention on him, thieves will attack him and rob him, and if he tries to defend himself with his Herculean strength, he may be wounded. I know he's capable, but I want to spare him. I do not want to expose him to obvious danger. On the other hand, no one will pay attention to the little one, knowing him to be incapable. In other words, nobody would believe that God is giving you and me such an unbelievable gift as to live in the divine will. They will literally push it aside, laughing. No one would think that I would entrust such an important sum to this person. So he will come back safe and sound. The poor incapable one is surprised that the master would trust him, when he could have used the giant. And all trembling and humble, he goes to deposit the great sum, with no one deigning to give him even a glance. And he returns safe and sound to his master, more trembling and humble than before. Look at the divine wisdom. Isn't it absolutely incredible? That's what I do, Jesus said. The greater the work that I want to do, the more I choose abject, poor, ignorant souls, with no outward appearance which may expose them. The abject state of the soul will serve as safe custody for my work. The thieves of self-esteem and love of self will not pay attention to her, knowing her inability. And she, humble and trembling, will carry out the office entrusted by me, knowing that she has done nothing by herself and that I do everything in her. I think that's beyond brilliant, and I'm going to stop there.